is, my child struggles with getting dressed in the morning, specifically zippers and buttons. Do you have any tips or tricks for that? So, very common problem. Lots of kids I see have this specific problem, specifically with buttons and zippers. When you're looking at this, you need to look at how old the child is first and whether or not this is an age-appropriate activity. So it's very difficult for me to say if your child is 3 years old, yes, they should definitely put that button in that hole. That should not be a problem, because all children are different. If your child is around 4.5, and they're still struggling with that button, that should be an indicator that maybe something is a little off, something they might need some extra help. For a button specifically, over here, as you can see, is a picture of button sorting cups. Basically, for the Instagram people, you can take any container. It could be like a peanut container, anything with like one of those plastic floppy lids, cut a little slit in it, and then see if your child can take that button and put it through the slit. If it's the first time you're doing this and you want to make it a little easier for your child, make that slit a little bigger, a little easier for you to slip that button in. Once they become comfortable with that, you may want to make it a little smaller. You may want to make it so that they have to put something wider in there. They actually have to push it through, form some resistance there, strengthen those finger muscles to be able to do that. That would be step one, because that involves being able to pick up something very small, very thin, and precision place it into a slot. The buttoning cups is a great place to start there. This picture here is a button snake, and for people on Instagram, what it is it's a long ribbon with a button at the end of it, and basically little felt shapes with slits cut in the middle. And this is a great way to practice buttoning with your children, because they're going to have to take that little button, put it through the felt slips, and then pull it out the other side. Now, once they're doing this, you want to move on to practicing on real buttons. However, you don't want to give your child a tiny little button and say, all right, you can do the button snake now you can do this little tiny little itty bitty button. No, you want to start out with a big button, even like this big. You might want to get creative, DIY one out of felt, raid your closets. I'm sure you've got a big coat with the big buttons. That's where you want to start with, because the bigger the button is, the easier it's going to be for them to grasp it, first of all. The easier it's going to be for them to pinch it, because it's not so small where they have to use a superior pinch. They can use more of a lateral pinch. And the easier it is for them to see the button going through the hole and to be successful with it. Once they're practicing with that, and they can get it through that hole over and over and over again, you want to decrease the size of the button and keep practicing. And hopefully the aim of all this practice and all these different activities and the cool button cups is that your child will now be able to do a button. Zippering is also tough for children. If you think about it, it is a bilateral task, which means it uses two hands. Nobody can latch a zipper and pull it up using just one hand. So how I like to teach zipping is through a method called backwards chaining, which is going to sound kind of weird, but it makes sense, so bear with me. Backwards chaining is a method of teaching a child where you start at the end of a task, and then you have them master that part, and then you move up to the beginning of the task. And the backwards chaining usually works when the beginning of the task is the hardest, because you don't want to teach a child a task and have the very first thing that they do just be the hardest thing they've ever had to do, because they're going to get frustrated with you. They're going to shut down. Having your child zip their coat should not end in tears type of thing. When you're practicing, do not choose the smallest zipper you can find. You definitely want to choose a larger zipper if you can. So I do not have a giant zipper, so I'm using a normal size zipper to show you. So when I'm teaching a child how to zipper, I will backwards chain. So I will latch it for them, and I will say, okay, now zip it up. Because when they're zipping, there we go. So you have to hold the bottom of it with one hand and zip it up with the other hand, which a lot of kids struggle with. I mean, I've seen you tell a child to zip and they're going to hold it up here and then try and zip it up here. You've got to, and sometimes you have to take the kid's hand and put it here and say, nope, hold it here, zip the zipper this way, pull away from it, and see if they can practice that, see if they can replicate that. Even if you start by holding it down here and having them just pull, then you want to have them hold it down here and pull it themselves. Once they get that down, a good way to practice is actually that pre-buttoning tool. Putting something small in a small hole or a small slot. Some practice with that is going to get them better with putting something small into a small hole or a small slot. And then once they're able to do that, they're already going to have mastered this skill. For your child, this may take days. This may take weeks of practice. And these are just, like I said, some tips that you can try. Now, there are, certain medical diagnoses and ailments and things like that, that it may be the case where a child is just not going to gain that ability to zip a zipper, and that's okay. If that's the case, they do make tools where you can zip a zipper, or I've actually just seen a video. Some clothing company just started coming out with shirts that have buttons that are magnetic. So you don't even have to sit here and do the task. You literally just have to take the shirt, one end of the shirt, pull it over the other side, and the buttons just kind of click together. And that's made for people who struggle with these kind of things. And that is a broad answer to that question.